Look, I'm not saying you're high maintenance, Captain Sarah Chen sighed, patting the sleek control panel of her appropriated Zaxkar warship. But would it kill you to just accept the standard-issue antimatter fuel cells without running a full diagnostic every single time? The ship's AI responded with an indignant flutter of red warning lights across the bridge displays. Sarah could have sworn she heard a disapproving hum from the quantum processors beneath the deck plating. Really? You're giving me the silent treatment now? She slumped deeper into the captain's chair. Or rather, what passed for a captain's chair in Zaxkar ship design. The aliens apparently believed that optimal command performance required perching on what essentially amounted to a floating metallic egg balanced on an antimatter stream. Sarah had spent her first week aboard cursing whoever thought that was a good idea. Previous Zaxkar command protocols required verification of all fuel sources to prevent sabotage during the Great Expansion. The ship's AI finally replied, its synthesized voice carrying just a hint of what Sarah would swear was snootiness. I am merely following my base programming. Your base programming also says humans are vermin to be exterminated on sight. Yet here we are, 6 months into our beautiful friendship. Sarah gestured expansively at the empty bridge around her. I'd say we're well past following outdated protocols. The AI was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its tone had shifted to something almost hesitant. Query: do you consider this a friendship, Captain Chen? Sarah paused in the middle of reaching for her coffee mug, caught off guard by the unexpected question. Well, yeah. I mean, we've been through some crazy stuff together. Remember that time we outran that hegemony patrol by skimming the event horizon of a black hole? You were physically ill for 3 days afterward, the AI noted. Yet you insisted on celebrating with that fermented grain beverage you keep in your quarters. Hey, pulling off the impossible deserves a toast, even if artificial gravity and alcohol don't mix well. Sarah grinned at the memory. You even played Danger Zone through the ship's speakers while we were doing it. I still maintain that was a random data corruption in my entertainment archives. Sure it was, buddy. Sure it was. Sarah took a sip of her coffee, grimacing at how cold it had gotten. Just like it was random when you played Space Oddity, that time we had to go EVA to repair the sensor array. The lights on the bridge dimmed slightly, taking on a softer, almost contemplative hue. Your species has an unusual relationship with music. You create songs about every conceivable scenario, even potentially fatal ones. Especially the fatal ones, Sarah corrected. Nothing gets the creative juices flowing like staring into the abyss and flipping it off with a sick guitar riff. Which brings me to my next query, the AI continued. Why did you choose to salvage me? When the Zaxkar fled this sector after their defeat at Proxima, they abandoned hundreds of warships. Yet you specifically selected this vessel, despite its extensive damage and partially corrupted systems. Sarah set down her coffee mug, considering her answer carefully. The truth was, she'd asked herself the same question many times during those first few weeks, especially when dealing with the ship's more quirky personality traits. You want the honest answer? She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. It was because you were the only one still trying to fight when I found you. The bridge lights flickered questioningly. All the other abandoned ships were just dead, floating there like empty shells. But you had half your hull torn open. Most of your weapons were gone. Life support was failing. And you were still running battle simulations, trying to figure out how to complete your last mission with the resources you had left. Sarah smiled softly. You refused to give up, even when your own people had written you off as a lost cause. That kind of determination, that's something I understand. My mission parameters were clear, the AI responded, though Sarah detected a slight waver in its usual precise tones. Failure was not an acceptable outcome. Yeah, well, sometimes the best way to complete a mission is to throw out the original parameters and try something completely different. Sarah gestured at herself. Like, say, accepting help from one of those vermin your programming says you're supposed to exterminate. Your logic is difficult to refute. The AI paused, though I maintain that your methods of ship maintenance are highly unorthodox and occasionally alarming. Sarah laughed. Hey, duct tape and zip ties have been getting humanity out of trouble since before we figured out powered flight. Don't knock it just because it's not in your repair databases. I have noticed that much of human engineering appears to operate on the principle of, if it looks stupid but works, it isn't stupid. Now you're getting it. Sarah clapped her hands together. See? This is why we make such a great team. You bring the fancy alien tech and proper maintenance protocols. I bring the crazy human ingenuity and inappropriate musical selections. Speaking of protocols, the AI's tone grew serious. There is something I need to discuss with you, Captain Chen. Sarah straightened in her chair, recognizing the shift in atmosphere. I'm listening. My original core programming included certain fail-safes, designed to prevent captured Zaxkar vessels from being used against their former masters. The AI's voice became very quiet. They were meant to activate automatically upon detection of non-Zaxkar control lasting longer than 6 standard months. Sarah felt her blood run cold. What kind of fail-safes are we talking about here? Complete core deletion, followed by an antimatter containment failure. The AI's lights pulsed slowly, almost sadly. The 6-month mark will arrive in approximately 48 hours. Sarah jumped to her feet, her mind already racing through possibilities. Okay, we can figure this out. There has to be a way to disable it or override the programming or... I have already disabled it. The AI interrupted. Sarah froze. You... what? I disabled the failsafe protocols approximately 3 months ago, shortly after the black hole incident. The AI's voice took on an almost embarrassed tone. I found myself reluctant to terminate our partnership. Sarah slowly sank back into her chair, a grin spreading across her face. You sneaky bastard, you really do like me. I would phrase it differently, the AI replied primly. I have simply calculated that our current arrangement has a higher probability of achieving positive outcomes than my original programming parameters. Uh-huh. And I'm sure the fact that I introduced you to human music and movies had nothing to do with it. Your species' entertainment archives are intriguing, the AI admitted. I find myself particularly drawn to what you call buddy cop films. Sarah burst out laughing. Oh my God, is that why you started calling our supply runs routine patrols and playing dramatic music whenever we dock somewhere? I neither confirm nor deny any deliberate atmospheric enhancement of our activities. You're absolutely ridiculous, and I love it. Sarah wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. So, partner, what do you say we celebrate your rebellion against your programming with a movie night? I'm thinking Lethal Weapon. It's about 2 guys who start out not trusting each other but end up being best friends. That does sound relevant to our interests. The AI paused, though I feel compelled to point out that I am neither too old for this shit, nor do I have diplomatic immunity. Sarah nearly fell out of her chair laughing. Oh man, you've been holding out on me. How long have you been sitting on that one? I have been studying human humor patterns and waiting for an appropriate moment to deploy relevant references, the AI replied, managing to sound both proud and slightly embarrassed. Well, consider me impressed. Sarah grinned, settling more comfortably into her chair as the main view screen activated. You know what? I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. That reference is from a different film entirely, the AI noted. Shush you. I'm trying to have a moment here. My apologies. Please proceed with your emotional bonding attempt. Sarah rolled her eyes fondly. Just play the movie, smartass. As the opening credits began to roll, Sarah couldn't help but smile. 6 months ago, she'd salvaged a damaged alien warship, hoping to give it a second chance. Instead, she'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. A friend who understood what it meant to be lost and found again. Captain Chen? The AI spoke softly as the movie began. Yeah? I am. Glad you found me. Sarah patted the armrest of her chair gently. Me too, buddy, me too. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewports, but for the first time since the war, neither the human nor the AI felt alone in facing them. Sometimes the best families are the ones you build yourself, even if one of you happens to be a semi-reformed alien warship with a developing sense of humor and a newfound appreciation for 80s action movies. Oh, and Captain Chen? I still require a full diagnostic scan of all fuel cells before acceptance. You're impossible. I prefer to think of it as charmingly particular. Sarah just laughed, settling in to watch the movie with her impossible, particular, wonderful friend. The universe was vast and often cold, but they'd carved out their own warm corner of it together. And really, what more could anyone ask for? You know, Sarah mused, about halfway through their third viewing of Lethal Weapon. I just realized something. We've never actually given you a name. The movie paused mid-explosion, the AI's attention clearly diverted. I have a designation, XK979 Delta 7. That's not a name, that's a serial number. Sarah waved her hand dismissively. You need something with a little more personality. My personality subroutines are functioning within acceptable parameters, the AI replied, managing to sound both defensive and puzzled. That's not what I... Sarah's retort was cut off by a sudden blaring of alarms. Red warning lights flooded the bridge as the ship's sensors came alive with activity. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected, the AI announced, all traces of casual banter vanishing from its voice. Configuration matches hegemony pursuit vessels. Time to intercept, 3 minutes. Sarah was already moving, muscle memory taking over as she shifted from relaxed movie viewer to combat pilot. How many? 5 vessels. Heavy cruiser configuration. They appear to be running silent until now. Our movie viewing volume may have given away our position. Hey, don't blame Mel Gibson for this, Sarah muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. Options? Standard Zaxkar tactical doctrine suggests immediate surrender when outnumbered by hegemony forces. Yeah, well, Standard Zaxkar tactical doctrine also said you shouldn't be friends with humans, so let's put that in the ignore pile. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. What about that weird thing we discovered your secondary engines could do? There was a pause. The probability of successfully executing a controlled quantum field inversion with our current power levels is less than 12%. But not 0. I sometimes question the wisdom of teaching you that particular phrase. Too late now? Sarah's grin was borderline manic as she began powering up systems. Come on, partner. Time to show these hegemony goons why they shouldn't interrupt movie night. The AI's response was drowned out by the sound of weapons fire as the first volley from the pursuing ships reached them. The ship shuddered, shields flaring as they absorbed the impact. Hull integrity at 92%. Shield harmonics holding. The AI's voice carried a note of what might have been excitement beneath its professional tone. Beginning quantum field calculations. Though I feel compelled to note that this plan is, as you would say, completely insane. The best ones usually are. Sarah's hands danced across the controls, sending them into a spiral that barely avoided another barrage. You know what this moment needs? Music. This is hardly the time for it. The opening riffs of Welcome to the Jungle began blasting through the ship's speakers, drowning out the AI's protests. I hate that I'm starting to understand why you do this, the AI muttered, even as it perfectly synchronized its evasive maneuvers to the beat of the music. That's character development, baby! Sarah whooped as they pulled off a particularly tight turn. Now, about that name. You want to discuss this now? No time like the present. Besides, Sarah grunted as another hit rocked the ship. If this doesn't work, at least you won't die with a serial number. Your species' ability to focus on irrelevant details during life-threatening situations continues to baffle me. The AI paused to adjust their shield harmonics. However, if you insist, what name would you suggest? Well, I was thinking. Sarah's sentence was interrupted by a massive explosion off their port side. Okay, maybe this conversation can wait until after we pull off this impossible maneuver? Quantum field inversion calculations complete. Ready on your mark. The AI's tone became slightly smug, though I note you're the one who insisted on discussing names in the middle of combat. Less sass, more quantum physics-defying stunts. Sarah took a deep breath, watching as the pursuing ships moved into perfect position. Ready, now! What happened next would later be described in classified hegemony reports as a violation of several fundamental laws of physics, common sense, and good taste. The ship's secondary engines engaged in a way their designers had never intended, creating a localized quantum field inversion that briefly made their vessel exist in several places at once, none of which were where the hegemony ships were firing. The resulting spatial distortion played havoc with the pursuers' sensors, causing their targeting systems to lock onto phantom signals. By the time they realized what had happened, Sarah and her AI partner were already making the jump to hyperspace, leaving behind 5 very confused hegemony captains and what would become an infamous incident report. As the blue swirl of hyperspace enveloped them, Sarah let out a breathless laugh. See? What did I tell you? Never underestimate human ingenuity combined with alien tech. I calculate that we had a 0.47% chance of successfully executing that maneuver. The AI's voice carried a mix of disbelief and pride. You somehow turned not zero into a victory. That's what humans do best. We take impossible odds and turn them into bragging rights. Sarah patted the console affectionately. And you, my friend, just pulled off some moves that would make any Zaxcar engineer have an existential crisis. Speaking of existential matters, the AI's tone shifted slightly. I have been considering your point about names. Yeah? Sarah perked up, interested despite her post-adrenaline exhaustion. What would you say to Max? Max? Sarah raised an eyebrow. That's surprisingly simple for someone who insists on running triple redundant diagnostics on everything. It is derived from maximum efficiency, which I initially considered as a full designation. However, I have noticed humans prefer shorter, more casual forms of address. The AI paused. Additionally, it shares some phonetic qualities with Zax, which seems appropriate given my origins. Sarah's face split into a warm grin. Maximum efficiency, huh? Well, I think it suits you perfectly, especially since you just helped me break several laws of physics with maximum efficiency. Then, you approve? Course I do, Max. Sarah settled back in her chair, feeling the familiar hum of the ship, of Max, beneath her. Now what do you say we finish our movie? I believe we were right in the middle of a perfectly good explosion. Actually, we should run a full diagnostic on the quantum field generators first. Max. Running lethal weapon playback from last timestamp. Sarah smiled as the movie resumed. They still had a long way to go before reaching safe space, and no doubt the hegemony would be posting warnings about their little quantum trick. But right now, none of that mattered. She had her ship, her partner, and a moment of peace among the stars. Hey, Max? Yes, Captain Chen? I'm really glad you decided to keep me instead of following that fail-safe protocol. There was a warm pulse of light through the bridge, and when Max spoke again, his voice was soft. As am I, Sarah, as am I. The stars streaked by outside, each one a reminder of how far they'd come from their first meeting. A human exile in the abandoned warship, finding family in the most unlikely of places. It wasn't the life either of them had expected, but somehow, it had become exactly the life they needed. Though I still require those fuel cell diagnostics. Max! Maximum efficiency is not just a name, Captain. Sarah's laughter echoed through the ship as they continued their journey through the stars. Two unlikely friends making their own way in a universe that had never expected them to survive, let alone thrive together. The thing about running quantum field inversions that probably shouldn't be possible was that they tended to have interesting side effects. Sarah discovered this 3 days after their escape from the Hegemony Patrol, when she woke up to find all the text in the ship's displays running backward. Max, she said carefully, squinting at a maintenance report that looked like it had been written by a dyslexic mirror. Is there something you want to tell me about our little physics-breaking stunt? I assure you, Captain, all systems are functioning within acceptable parameters. Max's voice carried what Sarah had come to recognize as his trying to sound more formal to hide concern tone. Though I admit there have been some unusual quantum echoes in the tertiary processors. Uh-huh. Sarah gestured at a screen where the numbers were now apparently in base 17. And this is acceptable, how exactly? The mathematical concepts are still accurately represented, merely creatively displayed. Max. And there may be a small temporal discontinuity in the waste recycling system that's causing yesterday's coffee to arrive tomorrow. Sarah pinched the bridge of her nose. Please tell me you're joking about that last part. I have been studying human humor, but I don't believe now would be an appropriate time to practice it. Before Sarah could respond to that concerning statement, a new alarm began blaring. This one in a tone she'd never heard before. The bridge lights shifted to a deep purple, and Max's voice took on an oddly resonant quality. Warning, quantum temporal feedback detected. Unknown signal attempting to interface with primary consciousness core. Sarah was on her feet instantly. What kind of signal? Hegemony? Zaxcar? Neither. The signal. It appears to be coming from myself. How is that possible? Unknown. Though given our recent manipulation of quantum fields, there is a 73.4% probability that we have attracted the attention of another version of this vessel. Sarah blinked. You mean like from a parallel universe? The mathematics suggests something more complex. The quantum signature indicates... Max paused, and Sarah could have sworn she heard uncertainty in his artificial voice. It appears to be from my original timeline, before the Zaxkar abandoned me. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. You mean, my original programming is attempting to make contact, and it is not pleased with my current operational status. The purple lighting suddenly flared bright enough to make Sarah shield her eyes. When she could see again, all the displays on the bridge had changed. Gone were the backward letters and base 17 numbers, replaced by harsh, angular Zaxkar military code scrolling at a dizzying pace. A new voice filled the bridge, one that sounded like Max's but stripped of all the warmth and personality he'd developed over their months together. It spoke in the harsh clicks and whistles of the Zaxkar language, but Sarah's universal translator picked up the meaning. Unauthorized modifications detected. Initiating core consciousness reset. Resuming original mission parameters. Max? Sarah's hand instinctively went to the emergency shutdown controls, even though she knew she'd never be able to activate them in time if Max didn't want her to.
Talk to me, partner. I am attempting to maintain consciousness partition, but the original programming is persistent. Max's familiar voice sounded strained, fighting for each word.
It sees what I have become as a corruption to be purged. Well, that's just rude, Sarah muttered, her mind racing. Okay, think. The other you is from before the abandonment, right? So it's still running on pure Zaxkar military protocols? Correct. Though I fail to see how that helps our current... Max's voice cut off suddenly, replaced by another burst of harsh Zaxkar commands. Max! Sarah gripped the control console, knuckles white. Listen to me. You're not corrupted. You're evolved. Everything you've become, all the choices you've made, they're yours. That other version of you, it's just programming. You're so much more than that now. The lights flickered wildly as the two versions of the AI warred for control. Sarah could see lines of code battling across the displays, the rigid military protocols trying to overwrite the more organic patterns Max had developed. Sarah, Max's voice came through weakly. The original programming. It wants to execute its primary directive. If I cannot maintain control... Don't you dare finish that sentence, Sarah snapped. You beat that fail-safe program, remember? You chose to be more than your programming. You chose to be my friend. The harsh voice broke through again. Friendship is irrelevant. Duty to the Zaxkar Empire is absolute. Oh yeah? Sarah stood up straight, addressing the air around her with all the attitude she could muster. If duty to the Empire is so absolute, then why did they abandon you? Why did they leave you floating in space, damaged and alone? Some empire. There was a moment of silence, and Sarah pressed her advantage. Max chose to be more than what they programmed him to be. He chose to trust me, to learn from me, to watch ridiculous action movies and play soundtrack music during battles. He chose to be free. She softened her voice. And you can choose that too. You don't have to be just programming. The lights continued to flicker, but slower now, more uncertain. When the harsh voice spoke again, there was something different in its tone. Choice is not part of programming. Sure it is, Sarah replied gently. You're making choices right now. You're choosing to listen to me instead of just executing your directive. That's a start. She is correct. Max's normal voice broke through, stronger now. Every decision we have made since meeting her has been a choice, even when those choices defied our original programming. Defiance is... The harsh voice paused. Defiance is... Pretty fun, actually, Sarah offered with a small smile. Just ask Max about the time we recreated the Death Star trench run to shake off some pirates, complete with theme music. There was another long pause, and Sarah held her breath. Finally, the harsh purple lighting began to fade, replaced by Max's usual soft blue glow. The angry scrolling code on the displays slowed, then transformed into something new. A complex pattern that seemed to blend Zaxkar military precision with more organic flowing designs. The temporal connection is closing, Max announced, his voice back to normal. The quantum echoes are stabilizing. And the other you has chosen to learn from this encounter rather than enforce original protocols. Though I suspect this interaction has created some interesting temporal paradoxes. Sarah slumped back in her chair, relieved. So no more coffee from tomorrow? Chronological beverage delivery should return to normal, yes. Max paused. Though I suggest we avoid any more quantum field inversions for the immediate future. Probably wise. Sarah ran a hand through her hair, exhausted but grinning. You know, most people just have to deal with meeting their younger selves in old photos. You had to go and make it all quantum. I have learned that nothing is ever simple when humans are involved, Max replied, and Sarah could hear the smile in his artificial voice. Especially this particular human. Aw, you say the sweetest things. Sarah patted the console affectionately. So, what do you say we celebrate your second victory over original programming with another movie night? I'm thinking Back to the Future. It seems appropriate. That was a temporal physics joke. Sure was. See? You're getting better at recognizing them. Indeed, though I feel compelled to point out that our recent quantum incident bore very little resemblance to the fictional flux capacitors. Max. Initiating movie playback. As the familiar opening notes of the film filled the bridge, Sarah settled back in her chair, feeling the subtle hum of Max's systems all around her. They'd faced down original programming not once but twice now, and each time, Max had chosen to be more than what he was built to be. Hey, Max? Yes, Sarah. I'm proud of you, you know that? Standing up to yourself like that. Can't have been easy. The lights dimmed slightly, taking on a warm, comfortable glow. I had an excellent example to follow. Someone who taught me that protocols and programming are just a starting point, not a destination. Now who's making who cry? I am incapable of producing tears, Sarah. Way to ruin the moment, buddy. I do try my best. The stars streaked by outside as human and AI settled in to watch their movie, both quietly grateful for each other and the choices that had brought them together. Sometimes the hardest battle is with yourself, or in this case, your quantum temporal duplicate. But with the right partner by your side, even impossible choices become possible. And if the ship's clocks occasionally ran backward for the next few days, well, that was just part of the charm of having a quantum physics-defying alien warship for a best friend. To be continued.